topic number 1, cosmetics. How has your pen held up over time?
Well, that's a good question, Tom. A lot of times what happens with some pens, when you buy it at first, it looks and feels sturdy in the hand, and then as time goes by, the whole thing just disintegrates and evaporates while you're using it. This has not happened with my Esterbrook Estie. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the Esterbrook Estie, not only has it withheld the rigors of daily life and daily writing, it still maintains a very polished look and gloss. I don't see a lot of micro scratches. I don't see a lot of issues that make it look worn. To me, my Estie is in its original condition. Now, is it because I'm super diligent about making sure that it's protected and stuff like that?
Yeah, it has something to do with it.
I don't think so, because I throw my pen in my pocket, I throw it in my bag. I don't really pay much attention to, oh my gosh, is there a coin in my pocket? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Mm-hmm. But my Estie has held up rather well, and cosmetically is as good as new. How about you?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I mean, like as far as anything with posting on the back end, which I usually write with Postit, I don't see like any marks or any sort of burnish areas where plastic coming into contact with plastic or the metal. Also the spring that is in the inner cap to keep things sealed just keeps working pretty nicely on mine. And also the clip, it just seems like it's polished. It's everything. The exterior seems extremely polished still. No cracks or any sort of micro scratches as you were talking about there. And I carry this, but what I do too is I carry the pen case. I usually don't throw mine in my pocket or in a bag full with the keys and other hazardous materials that could wreck a pen, but at the same time though, like I have used it a lot.
How often do you use your Esterbrook Estie in the rotation of flex nib writing? Because I noticed you have several flex nib pens, and then you also have the MV adapter with your 9128 vintage nib.
Yep.
How often does this get rotated into flex and or non-flex writing?
Well, it does get put in often. So I use actually the vintage flex, which I sought out separately. It wasn't one of the ones that came with the MV section. Those tend to be a lot of other like fines or italics, things that aren't flex related. So I actually had to go out and source that one myself, which I think was definitely worth it 100%. I love that there's a steel flex nib that I could go to on this Estie. The one that's on here, this modified Jowo 14 karat flex nib. This one is actually the one that you gave me a while back. So.
This is a 14 karat custom Jowo nib. It was customized by Linda Kennedy of Independence, who is a protege of the great Richard Binder. Yeah. And I felt that it's such a great nib, but my handwriting sucks. So I felt like you're more deserving of it. So I gave it to you, and you've put it to good use. Let me ask you something. How does it feel using a nib that doesn't belong on the pen in the nib? For me, it's an OCD factor.
I don't mind so much because it actually is unbranded. It really doesn't bother me so much because I'm not anal retentive, so. But no, it's. I
think I am. I think it's referring
a little bit. Yeah,
a little passive aggressiveness there. It's all good.
But yeah, I mean, it's super easy to swap out. Even if you don't have, let's say, a Jowo feed, you could just keep the Jowo feed on there and just pull the feed and nib out, and then just swap the nib back on there. It's fine, and it really holds up well to the ink flow. It's usually in my rotation because of the fact that it could be a flex nib, and I could get some pretty decent ink flow on it. So
I'm curious about your opinion on the trim. I know that the Esterbrook brand, they release palladium trim and gold trim. Do you have a preference? Do you like the fact that they release different colored trims and options, or would you prefer that it was just always gold or it was just always palladium?
Well, especially with what I've heard they're going to be doing in the years to come, is that they're going to be releasing a spring and a fall new edition. And I would probably say I like sticking just to one pairing of like a material and the trim, like whatever that the artist or that the company feels is going to be a better fit aesthetically. I like blue and chrome like how it is here too, but I really like the blue and the gold. I had an Aurora Optima Oraloid that had blue and gold that looked really sharp together. It's not a combination you see very often, but even that dark green looks great with gold as well. So I mean,
see, but that's the thing. Like, I like that there's options, but sometimes I wish there were less options, to be honest. Like, for example, I have the green and gold one, and I really like it. But then today I came and I'm looking at the green and the white metal one, and I'm like, wow, I kind of really like this too now. So now having the one isn't enough, and now I'm compelled to consider getting the other one. Whereas if they only offered one, then at least I'd be at peace and wouldn't be feeling a fear of wallet starvation come the release of the next Estie.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what people think. I wonder if you guys think that if there were less options in terms of trim, would it be easier for you to commit, or is having two options or having more than one option with regard to trim something that makes you step back? Will you just get both? Will you just get one and be happy with it, or always wonder if you should have gotten the other one?
How often do you usually write with your Estie?
I write with so here's what I do. The longest part of the review process is writing out the review. I usually like to throw down a Rhodia, take a pen, and start writing with the pen that I'm reviewing. Sometimes I'll also take notes, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll use the pen that I'm reviewing, grab another pen, write with that one, grab another pen. So by the end of one page, I might have used 12 different pens.
Right.
Or sometimes I just take notes, not for a review. I'll take notes for what I have to do the next day, what to do, what not to forget to do, so that my wife doesn't get mad at me. I have a large number of pens. So if you ask me how often do I use them, all the time.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Everything gets kind of even wear.
Yes, everything gets about even wear.
Don't you ever feel like you're cheating on the new pen that you just bought by using the other pens that are still in your collection? Or vice versa, let's say if there was a really awesome pen that you had just gotten, and or maybe it was like a year ago or so, and it was like it was like the apple of your eye at one point, and then you got a new pen and you have to put that one aside. Do you feel like you're cheating on it, or just, not being faithful to it?
Not at all. I've never actually even considered that.
Well, we're talking about like revisiting and relationships. So
okay.
We're drawing that little parallel.
Okay, so if we're drawing a parallel to that, I would say I like to flirt with all my pens.
Okay.
But I'm not married to one single pen. It's an organized mess. I just grab whatever it is. I might be writing with one pen and like it and see if I like one more, like one less, or maybe I'll take one that I don't like as much and then I'll write with it so that I do like it more.
What about this pen, continues to impress you to this day?
You know what continues to impress me about the pen is the way it writes and how reliable it is. I had put this pen down on purpose and left it in my pen case for about several weeks, and it writes upon taking it out. There's no shaking. You don't have to prime the feed. It just writes right away, and that has a lot to do with that spring mechanism cup that's inside here. Mm-hmm. Some people complain about it. Some people like it. It's just one of those things that are neutral. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah.
But if you don't like it, it's not really a deal breaker. I like the fact that it'll just write no matter what.
Right.
It doesn't dry out.
Even putting it down for a while.
Even putting it down for a while.
That's a good feature.
I always liked the design. I always liked the decision that they didn't put a center band on it. Mm-hmm. Yes, these are commercial grade acrylics, but I'm also always impressed with the high polish and how well polished it is. It's not like a Italian poured acrylic made in Europe, I'm sure, but it's polished in such a way that it almost could fool you.
And it also feels substantial too. It's not like a resin or an acrylic that, just kind of feels cheap. Like some of them could be really thin and just kind of like have that cheapy sort of feel, but it still has that substantial, feeling in hand. I
like the balance of the pen also. Posted or unposted, for me at least, it doesn't really affect the balance of the writing. $156 after the discount, right?
I believe so, yeah.
So the MSRP I think was around $195, $180, whatever it was. I think $156. This is a solid pen. It's a good price for a steel nib acrylic turned pen.
And it's just simple, and it relies on the one aspect that I feel bridges the gap between like the old Esterbrook brand and the new Esterbrook brand, which is the writing experience, and being that it has a Yovo nib. And I love the fact that the swappability of it, because the actual chassis of the pen, if you will, is a great size pen. It's, as you were saying, it just has a nice weight, even posted and everything. It just fits really nicely in the hand. and the adaptability of not only being able to use a variety of different JoWo nibs, ones that you get customized or ones that are already customized by nib meisters or ones that you have in your collection already, then you could also go with the MV section and grab a vintage Esterbrook nib and be able to pop that on there to get the whole vintage writing experience. So it really is like a very adaptable type of pen that you could always keep coming to and giving it a different, like, breathe new life into it by giving it a different look when it comes to the nib and the writing experience. Well, today I want to write with it like a stub. I want to write with it like with a flex nib, or I just want a general purpose fine nib today. You know, I could just do whatever I want to with it.
Ryan and Carrie at Kenro, they put a lot of thought into the pen. So they took everything that they know about pens and they poured it into this pen. So there's an identity of Montegrappa
Right.
in here with the threads. I like that. I just like the overall design and decisions. Now, a lot of people will say, "Oh, it's not vintage." No, it's not vintage. It's got a link to vintage Esterbrook because of the MV adapter and its backwards compatibility. I think that's a cool dynamic to bring to the table. You have vintage backwards compatibility with modern design. And here's another thing that nobody talks about and everybody doesn't really mention or give credit. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. The clip is made of palladium, so it has more spring and bounce to it apparently, but it also would also mean that it's also more prone to being pulled out and then springing. Let me ask you, is there anything about the Esterbrook Estie that you've found from the day it came out to the recent releases to today that you find annoying about the pen?
You know, annoying wise, really the only thing that I kind of come into a little bit of a conflict with when it comes to swapping nibs and everything is the whole fact that, let's say if I wanted to swap and I wanted to do a hot swap, which is just, you know, let's say if I filled this up and I wanted to keep this inked, you know, like there's a lot of parts involved, and I actually have to keep my Esterbrook box just to like keep all of the different paraphernalia that comes with this. I mean, it's granted it's not a lot, but it's just I felt, you know, it would be cool is like if they put if they had like a little topper that goes over it to keep this like sealed, and that it would also stay like that, you could be ready to write with it whenever you want to, and then just be able to swap it in your pen at a moment's notice. Also too, is a little bit annoying is I felt even trying a different non-flex nib is that the writing experience tended to kind of dry out a little bit intermittently, so I'd have to kind of prime the feed, but it wouldn't be like very often. And maybe, let's say if I had it inked for like 3 weeks, it would be like once a week. Like I would have to go in and just kind of prime the feed a little bit just to get the ink flow going back in there. But I mean, that's like a very minor type of thing. It just literally takes me 2 seconds to get it going again, and it's going.
I think that people sometimes forget they have a grip section that's compatible with vintage nibs, and it's backwards compatible. That in and of itself, to me, commands respect.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I think that, yeah, it would be nice if they clipped it on or put on a cap, but even without it, it's still pretty badass. You know, I really think it's pretty cool. Agitator is a solution you can also fix yourself. You can unscrew the back of this converter, okay? You can just pull out the piston mechanism and throw in a small
ball bearing,
and there you got your Agitator.
Cool.
You know, or you know what you could also do is like, you know, like these cartridges, break apart the cartridge, that little ball that breaks off when you pop the cartridge in, just rip that ball out and throw it in there. It comes with a cartridge. If you're using the converter, you're probably using your own bottle links, and if you're anything like me, you don't like using cartridges.
Right.
So lobotomize that cartridge and make an Agitator for yourself.
So what do you find most annoying, or has kind of rubbed you the wrong way about this pen over the time?
Okay, so the only thing that has rubbed me the wrong way isn't an issue that's over time. I had the Cobalt Estie and the Tortoise Estie. It's actually this one here. And the issue that I have is with the newer releases. What I find is that cup spring mechanism in here, sometimes, and more so on the newer releases, after you cap the pen and uncap it, it sometimes gets stuck. When normally you're supposed to feel some resistance and bounce and spring to thread it and cap it, it won't be there.
It'll just cap like a normal pen.
It'll just cap like a normal pen, which is fine. but that is now not the natural function of how it's supposed to be capped, and that tickles my OCD lizard brain.
It's supposed to give you that tension, that feel, that springiness before it even starts to thread. And once it starts to thread, you're supposed to push and thread it
and feel the resistance.
But like what you're saying is like like when you have the newer ones, sometimes that inner cap gets stuck in there, and then you would just thread it on there, and it would be all the way up to begin with. So you wouldn't get that resistance at first. Yeah.
So basically, what happens inside the cap, if you were looking at it, you know, using superhuman powers and X-ray vision, which I may or may not have, is you have the clip that's screwed on to the underside of the finial, and then you have the cup. Between the screw that's fixing the clip and the top of the cap, there's a spring, and that spring is grabbing onto the screw, and it's grabbing onto a ridge in the cup that's in here. What happens is when you cap it, the spring compresses, and that ridge catches more of the spring than it should and holds it in place and gets stuck.
Right.
So why is that happening? Are they using different springs in manufacturing? Are they using a different ridge in the cup? I don't know. What I do know is that it does happen more with the newer ones. The solution is take a pencil and a rubber band, jam it in there, and pull it out. That's the quick solution. It's going to repeat the annoying getting stuck thing every couple of times you cap it. So what I did with mine was I actually pulled out the entire cup with the spring, and I twisted the spring so that the circumference or diameter of the spring
it's smaller, is more tension to the spring.
So it's not as thick. So I twist it so it tightens up, and then I put it back in. And then once I do that, since the size of the spring is smaller, it's not gonna press down against the ridge and catch the ridge of the cup.
You haven't really used the MV section as much, right?
No, I actually didn't. I didn't invest in a vintage nib.
So like one of the things that I noticed about, because I just want to talk about this a little bit, just to kind of discuss the one of the major points of this pen is the fact that you could get the MV section and use the vintage nibs. One of the issues that we had come across a few times with our customers is that the plastic that's on the collar of the nib and feed, it's old and could potentially shrink. So what happens is when they've been trying to fit the Esterbrook nib into the new MV section, it sometimes will go in, like, let's say only halfway, and it just gets stuck. So
it gets stuck because it shrinks?
It gets stuck because the threads are not exactly...
Oh, so the space between the threads shrink.
Yeah, exactly. So we called Kerry Yeager, and he's going to probably, be watching this video. He recommended just put like a little bit of chapstick, a little bit, just like a little coating of chapstick, just to kind of like lubricate it to put it in, and to really, sometimes you'd have to kind of like twist it a little bit harder to kind of get it to go, but it will go. And just that first initial fitting will allow it to kind of like expand those threads on the nib, and then that way it's not going to be such a pain to kind of take it off and put it back on again. But yeah, that's really the only issue that I know of very, very few people had with the MV section.
I think Kerry Yeager has stock in chapstick.
He might.
That's why.
He might.
You watching this, Kerry?
In chapstick, and he is making a killing.
Silent investor in chapstick.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great concept that I think was flawlessly done in terms of being able to bridge a gap that was definitely needed with a relaunch of Esterbrook. Is to say, hey, there's a beloved brand of vintage pens that people still buy, especially at pen shows, and you're gonna relaunch this brand with a new pen. And we need to put some sort of bridge in between to like say, okay, everybody who used to love Esterbrook, come on over. We have something for you that you can enjoy about the new Esterbrook. And I think this was exceptionally well done, and has been holding up pretty well to my rigors of use.
I love the aesthetic. I mean, this isn't even mine, but I love every time I look at it. And I like the accents where it has like the two rings above and below the threads. I like that. I like the shape. I mean, there's nothing very modern about it, but it has a modern look to it. It's classic looking at the same time.
So what is some of the things that maybe you had heard of other people using the Esterbrook, or that anybody else like having feedback about the pen?
When I released the video review of the Esterbrook Estie, it hadn't been released to public yet. So there were a lot of comments on my channel, and they weren't disrespectful. They were just comments that are questioning the value, the cost, everything about it, because they didn't see it. Now, it's made in Taiwan, and it has a price point of $156. So a lot of comments that I got was, oh, it's just another acrylic pen that is sporting a Yovo nib.
Right.
Okay, so yes, it's an acrylic pen that sports a Yovo nib. That is true. They are right. But there's more about the Estie that I think that gives it more value than just the plain and simple fact that it's an acrylic pen with a Yovo nib.
Well, even if you look at acrylic pens with Yovo nibs, you look at, let's say, Edison, you look at Franklin Christoph, you look at, Opus 88 uses them, and so many different brands use them now. We were just reviewing the Retro 51 and saying, I can't really think of any other Yovo Yovo number 6 nib that is as great of a value as a Retro 51, because most of them do exist in that 120 to like anywhere to up to like $200 with a Monte Grappa. Like you're looking at a very broad range of, let's say, like $100 or so that use the same type of nib. But I really honestly think that if you picked a pen in that range, you still can't go wrong, because as long as it's well made, you're paying for a quality product.
Right,
overall.
and that's another thing that I think that it doesn't get translated in a review or a video or photographs is the overall quality, the polish, the finish, the details in how the pen is finished, how well it's polished. I mean, they can take an acrylic and have two different people polish it. One guy can just polish it quickly and half-assed, not really care. And then the other guy can polish it like it's the most expensive acrylic on the planet, and you're going to have two different looking pens. This is one of those pens where it looks like it was polished with a diligence that's comparable to pens that cost 3 times as much.
Right.
That's my opinion of this pen. So if you tell me, oh, this is an acrylic pen with just a Yovo nib, and it's another one of those pens that uses Yovo nib, throws on acrylic, and charges $200, yeah, you're right. But you're also wrong, because you're missing a lot of details that make the pen stand out.
Right.
The writing experience, what it's capable of, and the amount of polish and diligence that went into making the pen look as really glossy and shiny and beautiful as it does.
Right.
One of the things about fountain pen users and our savage fountain pen virus infected peeps out there, one of the great things that differentiate them and why I love the community so much is because there is open-mindedness.
Right.
They're going to stop and say, well, that pen is this much money. It writes, so does a ballpoint Bic pen.
Right.
This pen can refill, so can a G2. You know what I'm saying? But they'll select the pen, they'll select the expensive fountain pen, because they know that it's not just about the fact that it can write. It's about all the things that make it a wonderful writing instrument and a piece of art.
Right. Yeah, you need to appreciate the little subtleties that go on, and sometimes too is that if you look at it at face value, you miss a whole lot of that subtlety.
That's exactly the point, Another thing that impresses me, going back to that, and I touched on this before, is there's commercial grade acrylics, and then those are the acrylics that you see in your Edison pens. You see them in Durograph pens, the Conklin Duragraphs. You see them, and they're commercial grade because they're just mass-produced acrylics.
Yeah. I think there's only like 3 major producers of acrylics in the world, and there's most of them are Italian, but there's really not a lot of selection out there. So there's going to be a lot of different manufacturers that are using the same exact acrylic.
Right. But with commercial grade acrylics, you can make it look like a commercial grade acrylic, or you can make it look more than that.
Right.
Right? So like when you get an Italian acrylic, for example, let's take, I don't know, what's that brand that has like the trident on it?
Oh, Nettuno?
Nettuno.
Right.
Right? They have some Italian poured acrylics. They look different than commercial grade acrylics. The Conklin Nozac.
Right.
That is an Italian poured acrylic made in Europe. It just looks different.
Right.
I think that what they did with the Estie and how well they polished it yeah, it's not going to look like an Italian poured acrylic, but it definitely looks more than a simple commercial grade acrylic. It's just more than that, because Ryan and Carrie, they were obsessive about it. They wouldn't say, okay, that's good enough. I don't think to them when it came to the Estie, all right, that's good enough was in their vernacular, because this green acrylic, that blue, this tortoise one, it just pops more than other acrylics of the same color.
As far as like other feedback, other than people saying like it's kind of, you know, it's not worth the money, is there anything else that, you know, that you had heard in regards to like people using the pen?
Yeah, everybody who has an Estie that I've heard feedback from, the Esterbrook Estie, they have it and they love it, and have nothing but good things to say about it, or they don't have it and have nothing but bad things to say about it. So that's really the pattern of what it is. And I'm not judging, but you're making a judgment about a pen that you don't have.
Right.
And then you take people who do have it and they're making a judgment of it. There's a scale of balance.
The people who actually are using it.
Right. Now let's also throw in the fact that, all right, maybe that was a lot of money for them. Because sometimes you buy something and you have to convince yourself that you like it, or convince other people that you like it and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, maybe let's say there are people that just don't like it, but they're convincing themselves and they're not being honest with themselves because they spent all this money and, you know, they want to like it more, so they have to convince themselves or other people. Even accounting for that, let's say that's like 10% of the people, you still have a majority of people. No one has said to me, I got the Estie and it writes like crap, and the pen looks like crap and it looks cheap and feels flimsy. I haven't heard that once. I love the Estie. I really do.
And I mean, as far as like, because we've heard from people who, let's say, have had some mishaps, which I know that there were a couple.
What do you mean?
Like, as far as like a couple of issues where I think one of the barrel ring or the section ring had come off. But in any of those cases where there was a manufacturing issue, Carrie is kind of like the go-to guy when it comes to warranty, and he is. You contact him directly, even if your Estie is like 6 months old, like these guys are. You could just go to him directly, and he will straighten it out for you, because like they are completely committed. What kind of feedback would you give Esterbrook, being that, like, let's say if you were to try to improve this pen, what would you do?
Well, I would say to Ryan and Carrie, which I have said to them, and I'm pretty sure they forgot that I said it to them, because I yammer a lot, and I would love to see a threaded grip section so that we can have a threaded converter. And that's something that exists on Montegrappa pens, which, not for nothing, being that they're the distributor for Montegrappa, I see a lot of inspirations of Montegrappa incorporated into this pen. Why not incorporate that? That would be great. I would love that.
I do like the threaded converter, and it just gives you that nice solid fit. Yeah.
I would like them to rework the spring cup inside, because just as I'm sitting here playing with it, it got stuck a few times and then released and then sprung back out, and sometimes there's resistance, sometimes there's none. I would like them to rework that, maybe use a spring that's more narrow, or redesign the ridge on the cup.
So what keeps you coming back to the Estie?
Just all the things that I said before. I like the design, I like the feel, I like the polish, I like the way it writes. I mean, I just like it as a whole.
Would you replace your Estie if it got lost or stolen?
Considering the fact that I'm getting more Esties, even though I haven't lost, or anyone has stolen my previous Esties, I'm pretty sure.
Let's say every single Estie was stolen, you have no recourse of being able to get them back. Would you then buy another Estie to replace the Estie?
Yes, 100%.
I would agree with you too.
I would totally
get it. I would get it, and I would be very upset that I lost the vintage Flex nib, because this not only cost a decent amount to get, but
what did that cost?
It was $50 on eBay, and I got it towards the beginning of when the Esterbrook Estie came out, and I can't imagine what people are probably paying for it now, because there's only a finite amount of these vintage nibs.
I'm really looking forward to the new colors that they're coming out. If they're coming out with 2 a year, this opens a door for like people who like to collect.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's going to be one of those things that every new color, everybody's going to want to get a new color. I'm wondering, is it going to be a regular part of the series, or is it going to be limited? Is it going to be, you know...
I think it's going to be limited, but I would assume that if it did really well, that they would continue to make them. But One of the aspects that I find would be extremely valuable is that if you do collect them, is the fact that you could change the nibs out of everything. And so like you could essentially take the one that you had initially and be like, oh, well, I have a Yovo extra fine. It's like, well, let me order the new color in, let's say, a medium, just so I could switch things up. Or, you know, be able to have your MV adapter section and then pop it on the new pen that you just purchased to be part of your collection.
All right, we're going to need to take a break.
Yeah.
And then when we come back, close up the show.
Yep, we'll pause for a little commercial break.
All right, commercial break coming now.
Imagine a world where stickers and pens don't coexist in harmony.
Statistics have shown that only 1 in 10,000 pens actually come with stickers. Imagine the drought of excitement that comes from being deprived of pasting a fresh sticker on a notebook, a laptop, a car bumper, or even a random bathroom stall.
It seems grim, doesn't it? But not as grim as the reality that this is the world we live in. It is the here and now, and we allowed this to happen. Hi, I'm Tom Otto with Goldspot Pens.
I'm Roy of the PenBoyRoy Fountain Pen Review channel.
Thanks to Kenro Industries, in collaboration with the PenBoyRoy Fountain Pen Review channel and Goldspot Pens, this famine of stickers and plague of boringness no longer has to be our reality.
Gone can be the days of barren notebooks, empty landscapes of stickerless surfaces, and droughts of absolute pen nerdiness.
Goldspot Pens and PenBoyRoy proudly invite you to enter in a massive giveaway of a litany of stickers, including 4 sheets of Esterbrook stickers, loose stickers, Esterbrook name brand stickers, an unreasonably huge typewriter sticker, and arguably the best sticker of the bunch, a PenBoyRoy sticker. Oh, and there's also an Esterbrook Estie pen too.
To enter for a chance to win this ridiculous bounty of stickers and the pen, click the link in the video description below where you can enter in a bunch of ways. You have until March 31st to enter, so please, act now.
Prevent a stickerless future.
Enter now. So I think this was a cool idea, Tom. You know, I think TomBoyRoy, Tine Times. I think I always wanted to do this, you know, because it's fun to interact with the community. I want to know what you guys think. Do you want to see more episodes of TomBoyRoy, Tine Times?
Yeah, no, as always, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Love you guys, and be well and be safe.
Stole my line. Stay inky, my friends. How do you like that?